different teams, different expectations. But how would you guys compare this elimination to previous seasons? I know I took it as an optimistic kind of thing in the beginning of the show, but how would you compare this elimination to eliminations past?
I think for me, the expectations with Joel being injured were lowered. The expectations of his sort of quote unquote timeline are still there and still high. But I think with the way with the way the season started with James and then the trade and then him being injured and not really being himself, kind of lowered the expectations on this season. Knicks was just a team that we felt we still could beat. But you still have to look at the way things were going, the way he looked when he came back. It was hard to believe that we could win a championship, that he could go and play 4 rounds and win it. So that lowered my expectations for a championship. But I still felt we could win this series. I still felt we were the better team. So it is disappointing because I felt that we played in the series where I felt we were the better team, but we still lost 2 home games.
Yeah.
That's different. I mean, so I would say it's not quite like Philly, Atlanta, Philly, Toronto, those games like that. It's not quite like that. Even Philly, Boston last year. But the difference with all those games, they were all what? Game 7s. But this is right behind that because I still think at the end of the day, you put yourself in a situation that 3 of the games that you, maybe for the most part, the last 3 games that you lost, you could have or should have won at least one of them for sure, and maybe even 2 of them. You should have won. So at worst, we should be in the game 7.
Yeah.
So the fact that the way the games went and how we didn't kind of win the games we should have won, and how this wasn't at least a 7-game series and you lose on the road, that's what's most disappointing to me because game 2 was really the game. Like that was the game that was really going to decide whether this was a 7-game series. But you still had a game after Maxey helped you win in game 5. You got to come back and win game 6.
Yeah.
You got to win that game. And then at least take you back to game 7. And who knows how much pressure we already seen what pressure kind of did to them when at the end of game 5.
Yep.
So the fact that we couldn't get them back to game 7 on their court when all of a sudden they feeling that tight pressure as far as, man, we can't go out at home. But instead we got all that pressure and our pipes burst. So I would say it's disappointing. Not quite as disappointing as some of those other series that we've had in the last few years, but from that standpoint, to losing the first round in Game 6 at home, disappointing.
Yeah, I would put this up there with the Miami series from a couple of years ago when Embiid came back with the mask on, because at that point the expectations were kind of lowered at that point, and that's kind of where I put it on par with that.
Yeah.
It's rough. If you're comparing to previous years, last year was more disappointing because we were up 3-2 and we could have closed it out. We never had this series, right? So we had the Boston series, and then we lost 2 straight and got blown out. And just blown out the last game that's what makes that way worse. Worse than the 3-2 is the manner in which we lost the last game, that was like gutless last year. We just gave up in that game and got killed.
Yeah.
That was completely gutless. I mean, yeah, we couldn't get rebounds and like, okay, some of that's somewhat excusable, but to get blown out after like having the series up 3-2, that was bad, right? Miami, what was worse about that is that we also lost game 6 at home to get booted. That's not good. But we lost every game that series. We only lost one by single digits. The rest of the games were 14, 16, 35. I mean, my goodness. And then the last one, we lost 9. We had to claw and fight to lose by 9. That's rough about that one. And then the one prior, the Atlanta one, I think that goes, that's having, forget about having the series. We had like 2 or 3 games. We were by 20-something points against an inferior opponent and lost. One of those at home. 2 of those at home, right? Yeah, 2 of those. So and if you're going by expectations on those seasons, I think this was our lowest expectation of all of those. Partly because the Embiid injury, we didn't go all in on the moves. Kind of like what, not that I want to agree with Pat Bev, but what he said was true. The moves we made were not all in moves because we were hoping for the salary cap plan in the offseason, which we're about to come up on. So from management on down, this wasn't an all-in year, right? Like we weren't expecting to go all the way. We want to. Everyone wants to. But we weren't actively aiming for that based on the moves we were making, right? So I'm disappointed, but based on expectation, we're the 7th seed at the end of the day, right? The other difference is it's cool that we get to see what a season, how do I want to put this, without Embiid would be if he gets to come back by the playoffs, right? Because he was out for extended period. He came back after surgery, and then we're the 7th seed. So, like, in the future, if they want to say, hey, Joel, we want to go the Kawhi Raptor route and, like, just rest you throughout the season with a good plan. Like, you play 2, you rest 1. You play 2, you rest 1. Preventatively. Don't even wait for an injury to happen. Don't wait for your knee to swell up. Let's just say it's load management and rest you. And we'll take the seeding as it comes. Because I'd rather, and I'm sure that the coaching staff and management would rather have a well-rested, healthy Joel and be the 7th seed rather than a just coming off meniscus surgery and be the 7th seed. Because the time off's time off, right? I mean, whether he's out with a meniscus injury or whether he's out because we rested him 40 games, 30 games, we're still going to be the 7th seed. I'd rather be healthy as a 7th seed at least. Because if you gave us a healthy Joel for this series, who knows? But he's still balled out. I don't want to take that away from him. He's still, considering what he was dealing with, my goodness. But yeah, it's we got to see certain things as like almost an experimental type season. It just kind of sacrificed, even though they don't want to say it was a punt season. We talked about this way earlier in the year. It kind of was, right? But yeah, disappointed, but it doesn't reach the other levels of the other seasons, in my opinion.
Yeah. And also, too, yeah, with compared to the other seasons, this is the lowest seed we've been all throughout the other seasons. We've the Miami season, we weren't a 7th seed. I mean, this is the lowest we've been as far as seeding wise. So obviously, expectations will be a little bit lower. Are you checking that up, Teja? Because I'm pretty sure we were never a 7th seed.
Oh no, I'm not. But it was the first season since the.
That's what we because we.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we had never been. I mean, it was we were in the play-in, so that kind of tells us we were in the play-in game. I know that hasn't been there the whole time, but the fact that we were there and where we were before pre-Joel injury kind of tells you that the expectations kind of fell from there because we kind of seen where it went, how it went south.
Yeah. First year since the bubble, though, we didn't get out of the first round. That part's pretty bad because all the other years you're talking about, they're second round losses. So that also plays into it too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but most of those times we had home court advantage too.
Yes.
That matters.
For sure.
Yeah, we could have stole that. Game 2, man. Game 2 hurts the most.
We also didn't have a hostile. We also didn't have a hostile home crowd either.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.